Laramie Planning Commission to order. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Pacino,
Here.
Bowl,
Here.
Eisler White,
Here.
Moody,
Here.
O'Toole,
Here.
Schneider,
Here.
and Matamore.
Here.
That's 7 present, 0 absent.
Next order of business is approval of the agenda and minutes. I understand that staff wishes to change the agenda. Philip?
Honorable Chair, yes, I believe the change has to do with the postponement of the URA. Is that correct? I'm sorry.
No, Chair, we'll keep the agenda as is. When that item comes up, I'll mention that our recommended motion is going to change, and so it'll allow you to take public comment if you want to do that. And but we'd like to keep it on the agenda just since it's been noticed. So.
Okay, great. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda in minutes.
I just have one quick, I think it's just wanted to clarify. We have Todd Fieser listed as assistant city manager, which he used to be, but he is the city manager now, right? So I did want to just, okay, well, I would propose that we amend the agenda to reflect that that's in the new business item 6BI.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Also move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Planning Commission meeting minutes. 2/23/26. Got a motion to approve minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes from February 23rd, 2026.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now we'll start with citizen comments, but this will be on non-agenda items. Anybody who wants to talk about the URA can wait till we get to that item, and we will take public comments as usual on that. So this public comment period is for non-agenda items. So does anybody care to address the commission? Wendy?
My name is Wendy Chapman. I just wanted to ask about the time of this meeting. 4:30 is hard for a lot of people to get here, and I wonder if that could be changed to a time that's more similar to City Council. Thanks.
Wendy? Sign in. Why do we meet at 4:30?
Honorable Chair, I can chime in. I could take a look at the bylaws, but off the top of my head, I don't think that it's written in there a time. So I think it would just need to be discussed as a commission and a motion made. And I mean, for subsequent meetings, right? I mean, so we can advertise properly, but I think that's just up to the discretion of the commission.
We can take it under advisement. Go from there. Any other public comments on non-agenda items? Seeing none, or any online? All right, we'll carry on. Any planning commission staff reports or comments?
Yes, Mayor, we have a couple. I can go first. Two announcements this evening. The first being that the Forge Exchange, the public engagement space for the comprehensive plan, is open till the end of the month. So if you haven't made it by, we still have this week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, to come by and complete the exercises there. But we will be shutting that space down after 3 months next Tuesday, so at the end of the month.
What are the hours of that, Philip?
I can forward that to you, but does anybody know off the top of their head? I mean, we can pull it up real quick. It's like 3 hours in the morning. It's 3 hours different times a day. So that's why it's not easy for me to recall.
Oh, okay.
It's on our Google listing here. So Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., Thursday, 2 to 5 p.m., Fridays, 8 to 11 a.m. Thank you, Joseph. And of course, by appointment, yes. The second announcement I have, this commission with their boards and commission money that they received to raise awareness about what this commission does. That money that was given to by city council to every board and commission. You all, if you recall, a couple months ago, decided to spend a portion of that on new development review signs that make it easier for the public to understand what's going on a site. So we of course still have the number, and email on there, but then we have the QR code where it takes you to the applications page where you can find more information on the project. But we just wanted to let you know that those were printed, and we've already have a couple out in the community, but these will replace all of these red development review signs.
Excellent.
So those are my announcements. I believe Director Taney has one as well.
Chair, Commission, I have two, so I hope that's okay. First off, what I would just like to remind the Planning Commission, you all should be aware of this, but we are working on a downtown development plan with the Downtown Development Authority. And so Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, there's multiple events and opportunities to engage with the consultants, downtown businesses, DDA members, really pretty much anybody in the community that cares about downtown, to go to those meetings, schedule events. There's a survey available online. And so I'm just putting that out as a reminder. All the information, if you're curious about all the different times and things that you can do, they're found on the Downtown Development Authority's webpage. If you go to their page on the link from the City of Laramie's page, you'll see a big old header that says Downtown Development Plan, and you can see the link to the survey, the schedule of events, where everything is at. As Philip noted, the Downtown Development Plan also has engaged the Forge space, so in part with the comprehensive plan. So you can also, as Philip just mentioned, the different times available then, or by appointment. We'll talk to you about the downtown at that space as well. And so that would be my first announcement. Second announcement, I sent an email out last week about a joint work session with the City Council on April 14th. Like I mentioned, we're thinking your portions start about 7-ish, 7:30. If you can attend, that'd be great. Really, the opportunity there is to go over the downtown development plan and to hear what the public input that we received over the last 3 days, as well as prior to this, and through the Forge space. And so it's really going to be a first opportunity for both Planning Commission and Council just to hear about that process, how it's going, what we're hearing, and to get some direction and guidance from Planning Commission and Council at that time in a work session format. So that's all I have. So,
You have a question for staff?
I didn't have a question. I just had a comment. Some of you may have seen the signs that have gone up around the city parks, which are really nice signs. And I figure they probably cost $1,000 or $2,000 each. And I was surprised and pleased when I stopped to talk to folks that they made them in-house. And I thought they're really, really tasteful and really nice. At Laprelle Park, there was kind of a very depressed sign that looked like it should be on Prozac. Small, little, miserable sign. And these are proper signs. So it's really, the guys did a really nice, guys and gals did a really nice job.
yeah, I'll just note, as much as I'd like to say we had something to do with it, we really didn't. Our Parks and Rec Department and the City Manager's Office really guided that. So kudos to them. Those signs do look really nice. So, yeah.
Hey, nothing else. We will go on to disclosures. ex parte communications or potential conflicts of interest? Donald?
Well, as you know, we met with Derek Teeney. You and I met with Derek Teeney, and the reason was because of this blight designation for the property. I was contacted by two people, both of them are in this room, who asked me about this, and I had not read the minutes, and I didn't know what they were talking about. And then I read this strange document by AVI about the blight designation, and so we met with Derek, just to ask Derek some questions and get some clarifications on the whole blight process and the designation for funding, how the taxation thing works. So I heard from two people. I told them this was new to me, and I assume this issue is going to be postponed today. But I learned something.
Ditto. I did too, so. Let's see, any other? All right. We can carry on. We will go to resolution 2026-04, West Side Urban Renewal Plan and Project. Derek, take it away.
Chair, Commission, the item before you is proposed as a resolution. A resolution is how we would adopt a urban renewal plan and project. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to keep my conversation pretty brief today, just simply based upon previous actions that the City Council took last week. In a process that the City Council was working on related to this, they ultimately postponed action on the item that they were considering that is related to this item that's before you. So instead of requesting that you advance or do anything with this item, our recommendation at this point is going to be to recommend that you postpone this item to the second meeting in April, which would be April 27th. And then what that will allow the council to do is kind of finish up with their process, and then for you all to revisit this process if applicable, depending upon what council decides to do with the URA blight designation. I'll just note for today's purpose, the Urban Renewal West Side Plan and Project is similar to the North 4th Street Plan and Project that y'all considered about a year ago, give or take. And so this would be just one of the steps in the process, Planning Commission requiring your approval, as well as ultimately City Council doing a similar step to what you're seeing here before the Planning Commission. Because we're recommending postponement, I'm not going to go into very much deep detail. I'm just going to wait and save my presentation, if that's okay with you, Chair, for when the item's actually presented. My only recommendation would be maybe to provide still an opportunity for any members of the public who might want to provide any public comments, since if they showed up and they want to provide it now. They'll also have an opportunity on April 27th to provide public comment if they want to wait until that time as well. But I think that that'd be the only thing that I would request, or at least allow for that to happen. So other than that, I'd be happy to take questions at this point, or allow you to take public comments.
I have one question. I believe it's state statute that council, the elected body, has to declare a blight before it comes to Planning Commission, which is the reason for the postponement. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, the City Council was considering the designation of blight, and that's the item that they postponed at their last meeting, which was last Tuesday. So,
all right. So we have to wait on their action.
And I just wanted to clarify, you were proposing a specific date for it to come back, which was April. April 6th is our next meeting.
It would be
the Monday,
the second meeting in April.
Okay.
So 2 meetings from now.
the 13th.
Correct.
20th, I believe.
26.
Did I give? Oh,
Oh no, you're right. So it would be the This first meeting would be the second Monday, which is on the 13th, and the second meeting is on the 27th.
Correct. The 27th is the second meeting for Planning Commission, and that's what I would recommend that you postpone it to.
So before we make a motion to postpone, is it the wish of the commission that we allow public comment? Seeing no objection, we'll open it up to public comment. I know there's a lot of people here. I'm not a big fan of the 3-minute rule, but would appreciate it if you don't repeat yourself and keep your comments as brief as possible because we got a lot to go through tonight. So who's first? Sock it to us.
Chairman Matamor, members of the commission, my name is
State your name for the record first.
Brett Glass. And while I'm not currently serving on planning and zoning, I've been a member of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. There are many reasons why this proposed resolution should be voted down, including that it would be harmful to our community, would impact our tax base, and would violate legislative intent. But the most important reason is that you, just like the Zoning Board of Adjustment when I served on it, base your actions on findings of fact and conclusions of law. And by those criteria, the area in question does not qualify under state law as being blighted. Here's the important part of the law, which in your handouts you can see. You can see the most important part highlighted in red there. A blighted area means an area which by reason of the presence of, and then there's a long list of possible conditions there, substantially impairs or arrests the sound growth of a municipality, retards the provision of housing accommodations, or constitutes an economic or social liability and is a menace to the public health, safety, morals, or welfare in its present condition and use. So one of those things highlighted in red has to be true for the resolution to be valid and for a blight declaration to be valid, but none of them is. Is the area impairing or arresting the growth of Laramie? Nope, we've grown right around it over to West Laramie, and in 2023, Council officially approved a growth plan for Laramie that doesn't include that area as a growth area. Now, the second point, is it retarding the provision of housing accommodations? It's not doing that either. There's a huge development starting between 9th Street and 3rd Street along Bill Nye. Old Slade was just demolished and there's going to be housing there. And more building is going on all over the city, so it's not stopping us from developing housing. Now, is it an economic or social liability and a menace to the public health, safety, morals, or welfare? No, it's just vacant land. It's certainly not rife with crime, danger, or disease, or any of the things that are mentioned in the statute. And so this area fails all of the tests in the law. It's not blighted according to Wyoming law, and hence does not qualify as an urban renewal area. Thus, according to findings of fact and conclusions of law, you should decline to send this resolution to council. Consistent with the rule of law, please vote nay on this item when it comes to a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, who wants to?
Thank you, members of the council. I really appreciate the work you're putting into supporting our community. My name is Mirav Ben David. I am a retired professor from the zoology department. I taught wildlife ecology for 25 years. And I'm also the vice chair of the Albany County Planning and Zoning Commission. So I know how much work you put into this and I do appreciate it. I'm here as an ecologist who is very concerned about all the planning that you have already passed and this blighting proposal surrounding the Laramie River. You don't need to wear a coat today in March. It has been unseasonably warm winter with no precipitation. And the Laramie River is a major corridor, a major wildlife habitat for multiple species, both aquatic and terrestrial. And any development in the adjacent land will be detrimental to any of this species if we start developing. My point is, before you make a decision, and I emailed all of you this morning, I hope you got my email, please do your due diligence in requiring the planners to provide you with all the data about what wildlife may be damaged, as well as if we have a freak storm and a flood similar to the one we had in June 2010, what are the engineering mitigation processes? Please, I know how much it is, how much work you're doing already, but please do yourself a favor. We don't want to be 5 years down the line sitting here and regretting that we approved this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You sign in. Who's next?
My name is Anne Brand, and I am the executive director of a Laramie-based nonprofit, the Albany County Conservancy. And this afternoon, I sent you all a letter that I had submitted on behalf of our members to the Laramie City Council meeting that discussed this urban renewal plan. And just to state clearly, the letter does identify species easily researched. When you type in Laramie River Greenbelt, that information comes up because of databases that exist, like the WIND database. So you can look up that information about those species that are mentioned in this letter. The Laramie River Greenbelt is utilized by the University of Wyoming students as well as the Albany County Public School System. And I also know that the Audubon is very active regarding bird counts and other things. So the information should be very accurate. I would like to draw your attention to the fact of externalities. My group has been very proactive, not only in the public engagement component of wildlife in the community, but also advocacy. And that has included litigation regarding some things that have been overlooked at the county level in particular. And I'd like to see the city not fall into the same pattern and to take time now, just like Marav points out. Externality impacts the community economically, and this community definitely derives income because of the uniqueness of the Laramie Basin, and that directly ties into wildlife. And my nonprofit recently filed a petition in federal court looking specifically at eagle externalities. It's an economic externality. And so I just want to have you realize the concerns of the members of the Conservancy and ask you to look very seriously when looking at information. Marav's suggestion to have all that information before you is really important. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you. Who's next?
Hi, my name is Florence Sanchez Dakota, and I was born and raised on the west side. For several years, I was a caregiver for my parents. One of the saving graces for me was being able to go onto the Greenbelt and be by running water, and that feeling, that freshness, that energy, smelling the vegetation. Many of us don't have access or can't go into the mountains or any of the other places where people go for sports. The only contact we have for nature is the Greenbelt. I sat there one time on a bench and I played statue with the little white muskrat that came up and mink that stood there and watched me for a while. I've run into deer and fox, and I had a cousin who was special needs took her to the greenbelt and watched the family of owls that were up in the tree, listening to the hawks scream, and even being able to stand on that bridge and watch the minnows that are in the water. There's life, there's energy. That's revitalizing. I went and I sat there one time. It was a hard time, and I was sitting on the bank as close as I could, and there was a big bush here, and down here I heard a splash, and it was like, wow, what was that? It was pretty deep, and I had my eyes closed and thinking, and for some reason it said, open your eyes. And about the time I opened my eyes, right there in front of me, the heron was coming up out of the water. And it was such a feeling, such a connection. That's a living entity that I think helps give life to those that go and sit there and participate and do the walk and smell the fresh air and fights the mosquitoes. On the other hand, when you go on the other side, where it's got the trees all planted and it's more manicured and everything, and you're way away from the river, you don't get that feeling. There's not that much wildlife. You don't have it, and it's more like an urban walk. So on the side where this development is being looked at, I think will be a detriment to the population of Laramie, especially of those who need that contact with nature and can't get it anyplace else. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
My name is Wendy Chapman, and I've lived on the west side for 27 years. Designating the 4G land as blighted seems to be quite an exaggeration. It is a floodplain and a wildlife corridor. As far as urban renewal goes, this land was never urban and does not need renewal. This isn't just a NIMBY thing. As things stand now, many of our west side neighbors already experience flooding during heavy rainstorms. The city's plans to improve the storm sewer system have yet to be funded, and the thought of building on a floodplain before the storm sewer issue is resolved would only be asking for trouble for current residents and taxpayers on the west side. When the time comes, I ask you to please vote no on the proposed blight designation for the 4G property. Thank you.
Who's- No, you signed once, that's enough. Anybody else?
Hello. Hello, I'm Siobhan Kelly, a West Side resident. I've been thinking lately about John Lewis, civil rights leader. I was in a room with him when he talked about the beloved community, and it was in the context of environmental justice. I would like to just touch briefly on 3 items: flooding, financing, and faith. So Wendy talked about flooding. My house and Wendy's house and many of our neighbors' homes show up on page 7 of the plan. And yes, we are concerned about flooding. And the 100-year designation doesn't really put it into perspective. It's more like there's a 26% chance of flooding within a 30-year mortgage period. As for financing, this plan describes tax increment financing. It gives us no idea of how much the plan will cost to implement. So in that respect, they certainly are
asking for us to make a leap of faith that that the engineering will work, that the financing will work, even though it does take money away from our schools. Finally, I would like to talk about the West Side Visioning Plan. We haven't really heard about it much in association with this new plan that bears our neighborhood's name. I'd like to point out that the urban renewal bylaws for that group agency bylaws under 5.7, the review criteria for projects requesting tax increment financing assistance. Under item 2, the project is in accordance with the development policies and physical patterns identified in the comprehensive plan. You'll find that in the West Side plan and project in front of you. But this says, and any other official plans and policies for the specified area. And I would like for you to have this, if I don't know how that works. Thank you. This visioning plan was financed by the city. It was undertaken by the city and presented May 11th, 2024. It's a 97-page document expressing the vision of West Side residents. I would also like to draw your attention to Appendix A in the West Side Plan and Project. It talks about concerns of flooding and other things that did come up during the 6-hour public interaction, where arguably we weren't quite introduced to this plan. It was just a series of poster boards. We couldn't quite tell what was going on. This plan, on the other hand, took about 4 months. It included visioning sessions, surveys, stakeholder interviews, and a community hotline. Among the things they found is that this community seeks small-scale development. They include on page 27 a section that specifically addresses the community's response to the 4G site. I think that you'll find that very pertinent to your decision making. And it defines principles of meaningful engagement on page 39. So finally, you'll find in the introduction to the West Side Visioning document, it says the primary goal of this study was to showcase the dreams, concerns, and desires of the West Side residents in a document that could be delivered to decision makers in Laramie. I propose that that is you, and thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Henderson. I'm a resident of West Side. In August of 2025, I was quite proud of the work that went into historic designation of the West Side. That space was within 300 feet of the zoned changed area from I-2 to R3. And in that effort to make historic designation of the West Side, so many great entities came together and collaborated into that work. We're gonna recognize that work May 2nd, 2026 at the Lincoln Community Center, a school that's been repurposed with a great history in our West Side area. What's not been incorporated into this situation is any explanation to me that warrants a determination that the natural area, which is the corridor as mentioned in 4 of the last speakers, for a wildlife corridor. The species not recognized that I've witnessed in the area, raccoon. I'm interested in what other species are there. Not during any process has there been available information made to the public, to my awareness, of any wildlife impact study. That's greatly concerning to me in that regard. But more importantly, flooding was mentioned, right? Well, flooding is something that we continue to gain assurance, if you will, from city staff and other designees with a property interest, mind you, that there's an option to take care of that concern. Well, we haven't seen that, and we have increased surface area, impervious surface area substantially in the west side since that time. And even within the actual historic designated area, like and similar characteristics are detracting from that already valued historic designation that was received and designated in August of 2025. Just less than 12 months, and we've transitioned to another project initiative that will detract even further. We're not going to have the wildlife as we have multi-unit dense housing that's allowable by our 3 proposals. That's not going to happen there. And any investment that goes in there, I don't want it to be my city fees and taxes that support that relief to that 4G owner or any other owner passing down that might develop it. I'm not interested in that because it's fearful for me that my property value will see a decrease when only 300 feet from multi-unit housing. And at this point, I will reserve the rest of my comments for April 27th. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody online, clerk? Seeing no other comments and nobody else wishing, I'll close public comments. We have a request to postpone this item, but before we do, I would like to make a comment that TIF, and it's been publicized on the internet and other places, that TIF financing is going to take money away from schools and other things. TIF financing assumes that any property that goes under a URA has a tax base of X as of a date certain. And once it becomes a URA project, the value of it will increase depending basically on what the fair market value is of whatever is built on that land. So if nothing is built on the land, then it stays at that X figure. That X figure stays with the county. So nothing gets taken away from the county. If there's a development there, any increase in value in property tax would be X plus Y. With X plus Y involved, that X still goes to the county. If the project isn't built, they still get X. At the end of however the ordinance is written, either 15 to 25 years, that X plus Y will revert to the county. So that in practical purposes, the county doesn't have any decrease in funds, neither does the school district. And at the end of 15 to 25 years, that money will go back to the county on the finished project and when the URA is done. The URA has a finite limit, so just so people understand that it's not going to cost anybody anything in the school district if a project gets approved or not. It's going to stay the same. So, except for inflation. So this property generates what, about $3,700 a year in tax revenue. And if nothing's built, it's going to be $3,700 a year in tax revenue to the county. And if something is built, it's still going to be $3,700 a year to the county. So there's been a lot of confusion about that. So just wanted to correct that for the record. So anybody else in the commission have any comments? Jenna?
I have a question. So, city council is reviewing the blight designation and will be making a determination on that, correct? Depending upon that outcome, this in turn will come back.
Yes,
If they decide no, it will not come back, correct? Because they kept that plan.
it will not
away.
come back. That is
If they
correct.
decide Yes, it comes back. We don't make the determination of blight. That is a city council decision. We just have, our decision would be on the outcome of this.
Well, yeah, we won't decide on the blight. We will decide on the plan to deal with the blight.
I want to make sure that to clarify our role in this process.
Any other discussion?
What happens in our, if in our infinite wisdom, after the city has designated this a blighted area, we do not vote in favor of the resolution? What's the consequence of that vote?
Or you're gonna have to bump that one up to a higher pay grade. Would anybody on staff care to address that? Or we want to wait till the actual occurrence?
Chair, Commission, so if that was to occur, city council still gets to make a decision on whether they want to declare a URA. So, I mean, so it'll still go to city council. They'll have your resolution and recommendation not to make that a designated urban renewal plan and project area. So, and then council will have to decide that.
So they have an override. So we're simply making a recommendation and they can override that.
Your recommending body. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Someone want to make a motion to postpone this item?
I move to postpone this item.
Second.
Do we have to read the number, the title?
The date certain. Let's do date certain.
All right, I'll take it. The motion is to postpone resolution 2026-04 West Side Urban Renewal Plan and Project to the April 27th meeting. Or second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Chair, who was the second on that? Who was the second?
Me.
Jana.
Thank you.
And if I may, I want to thank the West Side for showing up as they always do. That's one thing I like about the West Side. You always show up and you've always got something to say and you're always welcome. So thank you very much for coming. Next item of business, let me flip the page here, is text amendment -26-01 UDC text amendment update on building codes. Derek, take it away.
Chair, Commission, I am just going to simply do a brief introduction and let someone else take it away, but appreciate the opportunity to come back up here. Before you is a text amendment to the development code. I'm going to introduce you. Some of you know Lucas Witt. He's our chief building official at the city of Laramie, and he is the one in charge of how our buildings physically get constructed in our community. And just for a little bit of brief context, the codes that you're going to, or the amendments that you're going to see as part of our municipal code, and really the portion of the codes that Lucas is going to walk you through are related to building codes and specifics that are in those building codes that we've adopted into our municipal code. And because we have an international building code, we're permitted to make modifications and make changes. And so the changes that you'll see before you are changes to the building code, but we put them into our municipal code so people know that we're making those changes. We can't change the international building code. We don't have that authority. That's not our code to mess with, but we can make our amendments here locally. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Lucas Witt come up. Like I said, Lucas Witt is our chief building official, and I'll kind of let him just kind of go through why we landed on the codes that you see before you and kind of what led up to that process. And then he'll run through those codes. Most of these, I'll just let you know, are kind of technical, but that's okay. It's fine. Feel free to ask Lucas questions, but he'll give you an idea why we're bringing these ones forward to you versus maybe some of the many others that we could bring towards you for you. So without further ado, I'll bring up Lucas Witt. So.
Chair, Commission, thank you for taking the time to hear this text amendment. Just to give you a quick background on this. So back in December, we held a meeting with our contractors. We invited about 500 contractors. We had 25 show up. Although that sounds like a low number, it's about double what we had the last time we did it. So these are a couple things. There are code changes at that meeting that we had. We had a couple contractors that provided us with some options, some code changes they wanted to see come forward. And the other ones are ones that our staff, my staff, provided. So like Derek said, if you guys have comments or questions throughout these as I go through them, just let me know. So first of all, this first one is it's a clarification of what we've been doing in city limits. So this ties into sprinkler systems specifically for 1 and 2 family dwellings. So back in 2012, the International Code Council had suggested that all single family homes or 2 family homes be provided with sprinkler systems throughout. At that point, the city had decided not to follow that. The problem was it wasn't changed in the UDC. So this is kind of that code change is what we're following.
If I may,
sure.
Just point of clarification, you're talking about a fire suppression sprinkler system and not a lawn sprinkler system.
Chair, correct. Yes,
right.
Yes.
Just for the record.
Yep. Sorry for that. So yes, it is a house sprinkler system suppression system for the entire house. So this code just clarifies that the city of Laramie is not choosing to follow that code, that 1 and 2 family dwellings are not required to install sprinkler systems throughout, suppression systems throughout the house. The second one is related to more mechanical code. So in that section, any intake or exhaust that comes out of your house, that pipe needs to be protected to prevent critters or bugs or debris from flying in there. The problem that we're seeing in our area is once you get down to that 1/4 inch, they're supposed to have 1/4 inch to half inch openings. So it can be screens, it can be louvers. The problem that we're seeing on that is in our area, it gets cold enough that those are starting to freeze over. So what we are suggesting is rather than the 1/4 inch, we're strictly just saying half inch openings. We're sticking within the code, but we are going to the largest amount possible. This should still allow any air to come through, but should still keep debris and all those critters out. When we had presented this in the work session to council, they were looking for other options. This is kind of within the code. This is our option changes, keeping it at that largest amount possible. Number 3 is talking about egress windows. So this has been in code for a while. We are just suggesting putting some additional language in that code to make it clear. So what it's talking about is if you have an existing window in your house, egress window, and you want to widen that window to put in either an egress or just make your window bigger, we need to have some kind of engineering to show that. The bigger one we see, right? Egress windows are a big one here in town. There's a lot of rentals. And so if they're widening, especially in concrete, like in the basement, we just need to make sure that those are being provided with engineering because it's bigger than what was existing. Yes.
If I may, once you make the opening bigger, the lintel is useless. So it would have to be replaced. I mean, so why do we need an engineer to do that? That could be done by an architect or any kind of draftsman. It's so long as it's compliant with code, you've got the right overhang, and you're carrying sufficient weight, you should be able to get that out of the code book. So right now we're looking at $6,000 to $8,000 for an egress window installed in a basement, a concrete walled basement. How much would another engineer stamp on it cost? Another $1,000? Yeah, I see an architect could do that, or a good contractor should be able to take it out of the code book. And it's pretty much all in the code book. That's my only concern about that. Anybody who cuts a lintel is a fool. I mean, they're going to end up, but if you're going to cut it, you almost always replace it. I've done this a lot in my past life. It's pretty obvious when you need a new lintel.
Sure, Chair. So this, just to clarify, so in code, you are allowed to have up to a 2-foot opening without a lintel. So you could have concrete there, and that allows you to not have that lintel. And just for clarification, most of the time those lintels you see a steel L
angle iron
that goes in there to support that extra opening. So the 2-foot allows you to not require a lintel. If you go wider than that, then a lintel is required. So they're not necessarily cutting the lintels out because it's not required if it's under 2 feet. So if it goes bigger than that, that's where we would require the engineer. And the reason for the engineer is they do have lintels in code and they do cover some of that, but most contractors that I've run into, they end up getting engineers involved anyways because it's steel and most of them don't have the experience with that. So that's where we're asking for an engineered fix on that.
Well, what is the minimum size required under Laramie code for an egress window?
So it's 5.7 square feet. So you could, what we have had in the past is they might keep that opening. So if there's an existing opening that's larger than 2 feet, that's
problem.
Then it's not a problem. They could cut down if they wanted to. It's when they start widening that opening, and that's where we're running into issues.
All right, I just think it adds an extra $1,000 to every egress window that gets put in, but I can live with it. I already put mine in, so.
Any other questions? Okay. Number 4, we're diving into energy code. So we've got a couple that go into the energy code. This first one specifically talks about the International Energy Code has requirements for new builds, for additions or alterations. And as each code comes out with that energy code, it's getting more and more strict. We've seen a lot of these codes driven from, California, other Western states that get really strict with these. And what we've seen is, like, we'll just take a new residential house. So if somebody submits a plan for a new residential house, they can either follow the energy code as it's written, or they can provide something called a res check. And that is a program that's free online, and it allows the homeowner or the contractor to use trade-offs. So if we'll just use, if you have to have the current code in a wall is R30. And if you don't feel like you want to pay the money to have spray foam done in that house, that's really the only way to accomplish that without going to like a 2x8 wall. You can use ResCheck to say, I'm going to put in better windows and I'm going to lessen that R30 down to what we see most of the time is an R21. So it's becoming a hang up as far as plan reviews go. So what we're suggesting and what we've kind of followed suit with the city of Cheyenne is they've created their own table that we feel like is more applicable to Laramie. And really the main change is in that wall cavity. So if you've seen the change in there, what we're suggesting is an R21 in the walls, an R49 in the ceiling, which is already required. Any windows has to be at a 0.30, which is code. And there's a few other changes in there for basement walls, for crawl space walls. And the biggest reason for this is the 21 changes. Like I said, when people are submitting res checks, they end up putting in a 21 anyway. So that we feel like this change suits Laramie and it speeds up the process for plan review, for contractors and homeowners to be able to get their permits quicker in our process. Yes.
Through you, Chair, I'm just trying to understand. I don't want to lose the flexibility of the res check. And so as I'm reading the text amendment that's provided in the staff report, it says for new single family residences, either this table or the current code adopted res check shall be accepted. So just explain that last part.
Sure. Sorry, and I should have clarified that. So Chair, through you. So they can use prescriptively, they can follow the new table that we have, or if they don't want to, they can still use res check as an option. They still could use that free website to be able to submit that.
So if they don't want to comply with what's in the table, then they submit how do you, I'm just trying to understand the hang up that results from the res check process. What they provide you something that then you don't have to second guess or reevaluate. You can rely on res check, but what do you need to do?
Sure, through you. So sure. So the res check, I'll just say, as that person goes in and puts in all their information, they're putting in all the R values. Additionally, they're putting in window sizes. They're putting in door sizes. So there's a lot of extra information that we just need to double check, where this table,
okay,
they're basically saying, we're going to use this for everything.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. The next section out of the energy code deals with something called a blower door test. So this is an alternative method that people can use as a way to pass inspection for their insulation values. It is an additional cost. It's a third party that they pay for somebody to come in. Basically what they do is they close all their doors, all their windows except for one, and then this machine that goes out one window for ventilation, they test how tight the house is. And what it said before this was it's required. What we're just saying is you may use it as an alternative method. We're just clarifying in the text that it is an alternative method to use in the future. Number 6 is also out of the energy code. It's one that was brought to our attention that it was a change that suggests that any future fireplaces that are installed cannot use a pilot light. So every time you want to fire up your fireplace, you gotta relight every single time. So we feel like we've had pilot lights on fireplaces for years. We feel like this maybe is an extra step. Admittedly, I have not done the math on how much extra energy somebody's using with just a pilot light on, but we don't feel like it's enough to cause people. So again, this is if you want to put one in without a pilot light, that is your option, but we are not requiring it through our city code. Number 7 is additionally of the energy code. This one we are requesting to just remove altogether. This one talks about high efficacy lighting. So what this code currently states is that all new bulbs, fixtures, all have to be LED. And we are basically choosing to give the homeowner or the builder the option to choose not to. So we're removing this requirement to say that if you choose to put in LEDs, you can, but it's not every single one has to be. Some people still choose to put in the older fixtures. They can't find them in LEDs. So that's an option that people can choose. Number 8 is along the same lines. This one specifically talks about the current code requires that all switches or all lighting has to be controlled by either a dimmer switch or an automatic shutoff. So if somebody walks out of their living room, if you have an automatic shutoff on there and the lights go out, you're saving energy. That's their thought process. Again, we're choosing to remove it and say that if you want to have just a regular switch in your house that doesn't cost an additional $7 to put in on every single one, that's your option. We feel like it should be up to the homeowner or the contractor to be able to put that in if they choose to. Number 9 is a change that we feel like fits Laramie. This in code requires before drywall is done, before insulation is done, at our what we call a rough-in inspection, the person, if you have a walk-in shower, you would have to fill that shower base with water, and then it has to hold that water for a period of 15 minutes. What we've seen and what our concern is, if we're in the middle of winter, a normal winter where it's actually cold, and they fill those up, then as you drain that water down through, now you have water, you have condensation in your line already, and that could freeze and break pipes. What we would like to do is remove it, and you can just do an air test. That's still, you still block, you're still filling it with air that for that 15 minutes, and it pressure checks all of those joints just like water would. Number 10 is also talking about the plumbing code. So what this one talks about is saying that all fixtures and fittings have to be smooth and impervious surface for water, for any debris that gets in there, food, anything like that. It has to be smooth so your drain doesn't clog. What we are seeing is people using what they're called corrugated pipes, flexible pipes, and those, they can't be used if they're not a smooth surface on the inside. So if you're using a flex pipe, more than likely you got ridges on the inside, you're trapping debris and we're getting more clogs. So what we are suggesting is to not be allowed to use those, just to prevent any clogging or any problems with flooding or clogging of drains. And lastly, this one is one that we have also seen as a holdup for plan review. So currently, all sleeping rooms, pretty much sleeping rooms, require a fire or smoke alarm in each one of those for houses. What we get currently is you get sleeping rooms, but then we get offices, we get dens, we get things that could potentially be used as sleeping rooms. So what we're saying is if it's a room specifically with an egress window already installed in it, that we are just asking that those also have smoke alarms in them. That way we don't have somebody building those and then turning them into sleeping rooms. They're already prepped for it. You've already got your egress window. This just requires them to put in a smoke alarm in there as well. They're already wiring the house. They're literally just tying that into the system. That is the last of my codes. If you guys have any other questions, I appreciate the time.
Questions?
Not a question, but how do I put this? I'm a kvetcher. You know what a kvetcher is?
Yeah.
I like whining. And a lot of our builders like whining. And I hear a lot of whining about goddamn city meeting, you know. And so I think this is a really useful exercise. And I really appreciate you went through this. And initially on the written comments, you got, what, 2 comments from one person? And then you held an open meeting. And then you got the suggestions. Some of them were rejected, but a lot of them you've accepted. And it shows there's bend in the system, there's flexibility in the system. And I think this is really good stuff to see being done. So I appreciate you doing this.
I'll just say that I was at the December meeting and I like this. It shows some flexibility, but it's a good start. There's got to be more. And find some more. Sharon, you had something?
Well, I also was pleased to see the engagement. I was just curious whether the people who came to that December meeting, whether initiative was taken to give them specific notice about the consideration, a heads up about the consideration at the Planning Commission of these matters. I mean, it's not required, but would have probably been appreciated. Was that something that was done?
Chair, through you, are you specifically asking if we gave Planning Commission a heads up, or are you talking about contractors?
Yeah, just a heads up to the contractors who had come to the meeting, because they're not necessarily going to follow exactly when action is going to be taken on these. So that I was just curious.
Chair, through you, yeah, we did send out the one guy that did give us the comment ahead of time. We did let him know, and then. Yeah, we've tried to be as open as we can with them about the codes that were brought up in that meeting and the ones that we are bringing forward.
Just so you know, I was at the meeting and the biggest complaint seemed to be that nobody answering the phone and the computer was slow. So that's just like everything else.
Yeah, and I thought for the 25 people, I heard you say showed up at that meeting to give feedback. I think that's very valuable feedback, and they're probably interested in knowing which of the suggestions that were made were accepted, and a lot of them were, and which weren't. And so that's why I think this meeting of the Planning Commission is probably of particular interest to those 25 people. Sure. You get to be here anyway, but
Donald?
Did the document, the prepared document, the code update, city council work session, blah, 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 did that go out to the contractors? Did you send that out to them?
Chair, through you, I believe we did. I know we had reached out to either everyone that proposed something in that meeting or ones that had come up to us afterwards and asked, are you guys bringing this forward? I would have to double check if it went out to every single contractor like we did with the invite.
But it went out to the folks who showed up.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like we didn't send it to everyone, but we did the ones that came.
All right, anything else? Jake? And I guess the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll move to recommend that the city council approve amendments to Laramie Municipal Code Title 15 for the purpose of updating, amending, adding, and deleting select sections of the ICC 2024 code within the city code as recommended by staff.
A second? Got a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Our next order of business requires us to adjourn as a planning commission and reconvene as the Board of Adjustment. Anybody care to make that motion?
I move we adjourn and then reassemble without changing our places as the Board of Adjustment.
Before we do that, do we have a second?
Second.
Anybody want to take 5?
I want to go to the bathroom.
Okay. So before we vote on this, why don't we take a temporary adjournment? It is 5:41 and 5:46. We will reconvene as the Board of Adjustment. Yes. You there? Looks like he's there. We had a motion on the floor to adjourn and reconvene as the Board of Adjustment. All those in favor, say aye.
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 We're now sitting as the Board of Adjustment. Are there any witnesses who wish to speak on this variance? Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, thank you very much. We will now commence. Who's taking this one, Joe?
Chair, Commission. This is a variance for a setback within the Neighbors of Laramie River mobile home community, formerly known as at least for those of us who have been here for a while. Located at 1664 Cedar Street. Kind of before we go through this, I do want to kind of preface this as we did bring this before you guys. It was noticed at the beginning of the year. We did postpone this item because we needed a certified surveyor to submit to stamp the documents that were provided. We did get those eventually, which you have in your packet now. But during that time, we did get a request to include the entire code section within as a memo attached to this document. So you did have that attached to this. And just for complete clarity and everything like that, I do want to go through the specific section that we are talking about here related to setbacks primarily, because they are different than your normal setback requirements that you guys may normally see. So if you'll deal with me for a second, on Exhibit A, page 2, it does say all manufactured homes and extensions thereof, accessory structures, and other buildings shall be set back 20 feet from the boundary of a manufactured home community, 40 feet from the edge of a public right-of-way, 10 feet from a private interior drive or walking or parking area or other common space, and 16 feet from any other manufactured home. I did want to make sure that that was clear to you guys from the very beginning, that this is different than what you guys normally view within zoning districts. This is use specific, and we don't have very many of these in code where we have a specific use that has different setbacks from anywhere. But with that kind of nailed down, I am going to go through just kind of the background of the application. On December 9th, the City of Laramie Planning Division received a variance application for the setback violation for manufactured homes located within the manufactured home community previously mentioned. During a inspection for COing the units that were there on the site, or 3 units that were there on site, it was noted by planning staff as well as the city building officials that the units were not placed correctly, meeting the required setbacks. These setbacks were not the original setbacks that the owner would have seen with the previous units that were on site. The units that were on site previously were considered grandfathered in, as is the use on the site. And so any new units that were brought in would have to meet the setback requirements because they would have lost the grandfathered status on there. Now, as we're going through this, we do have to find findings of fact for these variances. As some of you know already, in order to approve a variance, all findings of fact do need to be met, and it is a majority of the entire body, which does not matter today because you all are here. But the first finding that we do review is whether or not there are any special circumstances or conditions fully described in the board's findings that are peculiar to the land or building for which the adjustment is sought and do not apply generally to land or buildings in the neighborhood. The Planning Division concluded that there was no special circumstances or conditions existing regarding the land or building that would justify the regulatory relief. Neighbors of Laramie River is similar to other manufactured home parks in the community in that spaces were originally laid out to accommodate trailers of the time period. As we've moved through time, we have seen generally larger trailers brought into same size lots, which does kind of create some issues in these areas. With the increased size of manufactured homes throughout the industry, the community's historical space configuration no longer meets the requirements of the element MC section that we've previously gone over. While previous trailers were exempt due to being grandfathered into previous code, the removal and installation of the new structures require compliance with current municipal code, including their setbacks. The second one is whether or not there are circumstances or conditions where strict application of the provision of the code would deprive the applicant of reasonable use of such land or building. This is kind of what we call the takings clause right there. Is this considered a takings of some sort? While code was written, does not permit manufactured home communities to be used within the B1 zoning district. The property itself is grandfathered in and the use itself is grandfathered in. It does not leave the property without any viable uses, nor does it prevent the owner from using the property in the same general level of use enjoyed by the property that's currently used there, as well as any other uses that are within the B1 zoning district. This was also a question that we had previously, whether or not how long the B1 zoning district has been there. B1 zoning district has been there since at least 95. It was not the original date that it was put in there, but it did ultimately change throughout the time that it was owned and has been there for a couple decades at this point. The third finding, finding C, is not particularly applicable to this case at all because there's no solar or wind units being requested on this site. Generally, you guys do not review that one, and so it would not be counted against them. D, the granting of the adjustment is necessary for reasonable use thereof, and the adjustment as granted is the minimum adjustment that will accomplish the purpose. I will say there's a slight change in this because I did have to go out to the site after this was written and look at it. On the surveying, there are boxes on each site. Those are not the units themselves. Those are the parking pads. And so that kind of messed me up when I was reviewing the actual units. If we were looking at specifically the ones that were in violation, 74, 77, and 79. 74 is about 20, maybe probably a little bit more on its current setback. 77 is about 12 and a half from the property line, and 79 is about 14. I'm saying about because I'm not a surveyor and I'm going from the property line. However, kind of looking at this, I think generally speaking, with the size of the unit and everything, this would be the minimum amount that would be required, judging by the fact that 10 feet does need to be set back off of the private interior drive. The other side, setback would be the minimum that they would need in order to get this passed through. If applicable, the circumstances or conditions are such that the strict application, the provision of code would deprive the applicant of access to alternative. Oh, sorry, already did that one. Moving on to the next page, the granting of the variance is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of code and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. I will say that this has been here at least since the early 80s, this unit. So if we're talking about being injurious to the neighborhood around it, we would probably say that it's not. However, I think it's fairly clear with the change of zoning on the site that it was desired by your predecessors as well as city council, that this use was not allowed within that area. It's not what we're going over today. We're just going over whether or not the variance is applicable. That could potentially be a conversation for some other time. But really the variance is not considered continuous with or consistent with the general purpose of code. We do allow things to be grandfathered in, and we do allow some leniency as far as, setbacks either through minor administrative modifications, or those things. This kind of does go beyond our general way that we have applied code in the past to these sorts of sites. Finally, the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district in which its property is located, nor substantially or permanently impair appropriate use or development of adjacent properties. Like I said, this has been here for decades at this point, and very likely would not alter or hurt anything in the general area. However, I think that people do have the general assumption that things will slowly, at the very least, come into conformance, which this is not. This is moving farther away from conformance. I do want to point out that while I have mentioned sites 74, 77, and 79, the applicant did request full variance of this provision of code for everything along the southern boundary. There is some concerns that planning commission or the planning division has about this, especially considering that the furthest most southeast portion of the property does act as a little bit of an island, being surrounded on the north, the west, and the south sides completely by public right-of-way. Historically speaking, we're seeing a lot of this with our manufactured home parks. They're pretty dated in the way that they're laid out. With newer manufactured home parks, you do see primarily internal drives with no units accessing public streets. And as the code is written, I think that is the desire of this code, is to see things move closer to that. They do have those, just on the other side. With that, legal notice was published in the Laramie Boomerang on March 7th, 2026, and letters were sent out to surrounding property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Prior to writing the staff report, Planning Division received a few inquiries, 2 or 3 inquiries, but no comments were received. Again, we do ask that people submit written comments to us so that we can appropriately convey them to you guys if they do feel so inclined. With that, the Planning Division does recommend that the Planning Commission move to deny the request for the variance from Laramie Municipal Code 1514-140A.6. And we do have the representative of the applicant here, Mr. Van Fleet, as well as potentially some people online who do work for TCC. And I also stand for questions.
Well, I've got a few on this one. Let's go to point A, special circumstances or conditions. I think, in my humble opinion, there is a special circumstance in the fact that when this was built, it complied with zoning and zoning changed, and probably the owner just was too lazy or whatever to do anything. We've now have an owner who's willing to improve a dilapidated property, but he's faced with the 40-foot setback rule. The special circumstance, in my opinion, is 40% back from the right-of-way. But the right-of-way includes an 80-foot landscaped area between his property and the road. To me, that makes it a special circumstance. I think that he is forced to either reduce the size of the units he can put in there or not use the property, plant grass on it or something. I mean, so he's done this with 3 that are not in compliance with current code conditions. So I think that's a special circumstance. The fact that it's 40 feet from the right of way, but there's an 80-foot landscape area. And I think some consideration ought to be made on that. My second point is, staff has determined that strict application of the provisions of the code would not deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of such land or building. If you can't put a mobile home park on a piece of dirt in a mobile home park, I think that is denying him reasonable use of the property. I mean, should he just redo this and start building townhomes? Or, it is more than reasonable that he put mobile homes in a mobile home park, and that I can't see any other thing that can go in there. I lived through the Bronx. Yeah.
If I could jump in real quick before commission comments, I would encourage you to offer the applicant a chance to voice his concerns and give a little background on the variance as well.
Okay with the commission? Yeah.
Joe, there's a statement in Mr. Van Fleet's letter. Strict enforcement will eliminate homes for approximately 25 families, Laramie families, and discourage the applicant to make improvements and increase affordable housing in the area. Is that statement accurate? Because I thought the setback requirement applies only to the 3 new manufactured homes on lots 74, 77, and 79. And I assumed the other 22 homes are grandfathered.
Chair, through you. Yes. Anything that is currently set on the sites are grandfathered in. We're not requiring them to be removed. It's the new ones that are coming in that we do hold to current standards. Yes.
So it only impacts 3 of the units which are currently not being used, I assume. It doesn't impact the other 22.
Yes. And any others that are coming in the future.
Could I ask one other question? This area is right beside the Laramie River. Does this area flood?
I don't know. Like, it was not something that we've seen. I have not seen that specifically, and I'm the one that's in these mobile home communities the most. I'll just say the banks over there are pretty high compared to the river itself.
Okay. So there's a levee of some kind.
It appears that way. Yeah.
Okay. This should be on the floodplain, but the levee probably prevents flooding.
You're asking me, so I can certainly look that up, but I do not believe that this is within this floodplain. No.
Okay.
Chris, you had your hand up?
Yeah, Chair. In the letter from the attorney Brown and Heisler, they state specifically what the variance they're requesting is. And there's 2 requests. One is that all trailers located on the southern boundary of the park get a variance. And also that there's a dimensional variance for lots on the southern border of the park with respect to the, I think the distance from the property line. There's really no comment about lots 74, 77, and 79. They're asking for an all-inclusive on the southern boundary exclusion for any of these setbacks, right-of-way or property line on that whole boundary, which is quite extensive. I mean, then are there any, and this is maybe something that the applicant can address, but would there be then, if we approved these dimensional variances, then there would be, they could put the houses, 10 feet or 5 feet from the property line. There wouldn't be any standard setback standard if we gave them that dimensional variance. And they're all that's required is to put a trailer back on a lot that fits the setbacks. And I think the primary one being 20 feet from the property line. And it's not stopping them from putting a trailer on that lot. It just can't be a much larger trailer that won't fit on these small lots with the existing setback. So I just wanted to make sure if we had clarity with what the variance we are considering actually is it's lots 74, 77, and 79, or the whole, or these dimensional variances across the whole southern boundary.
Chair, through you, as the applicant did write in theirs, they are requesting the entire southern boundary. From my interpretation, I am mentioning these three because they were the onus of the initial variance, the kind of tipping point that did bring this before us. Can certainly ask the applicant himself what he would like specifically, and if that's changed at all. But yeah, and to the other point that Commissioner Moody was making, a like for like change of units, something that is the exact same size, the exact same dimensions, does continue the grandfathering clause. So if it is the exact same dimensions, which arguably is very difficult with the current manufacturing standards, then we no longer come to this issue of setbacks or anything like that. So
we come back to the reasonable use problem. If you can't get a trailer the same size as is being replaced, that's an unreasonable request, isn't it? I mean, unless you want somebody to build custom trailers to old sizes. So to me, that doesn't seem reasonable.
Chair, I'm going to take that as a question.
Yeah.
I think that there would be some adjustments that need to be made, correct? Either a change in size of the trailers themselves, repositioning of the trailers, maybe the lots themselves would need to be enlarged. Maybe the trailers would have to be placed at a bias, an angle. Disagree with you that it is taking away a use, but that is your prerogative to make that decision.
We'd like to hear from the applicant. Is that the sense of the commission? The applicant? Would you state your name for the record?
My name is Jeff Van Fleet, and I represent Neighbors of Laramie, also known as TCC Management. I'm an attorney at Brown and Heiser here locally. I've been in front of City Council and various commissions for a number of things over the years, and I think it's important that you look at this issue. I think if we all used common sense, we could just say this makes sense. In 1981, Lee's trailer park added 13 spaces to their lot, to their current layout. And back then, the council said, the people who were on this council then said, it makes sense to have a trailer park here. It's the best use for that particular piece of property. And they allowed Lee's to add 13 more lots. Now, how long has Lee's been there prior to that? I don't know, right? I've dug through the various notes for the Planning Commission. I'm in the 70s right now, and I've yet to find where it was added to the city. Maybe I'll get back to the 60s and I can find the exact date. The point being is it's been there a long time. A lot of the trailers that are in there right now were put in there back in the 60s and 70s and early 80s. They're not a place that we want to have people living in, right? And I can tell you, working with the state and trying to get a trailer removed is like an act of God. It takes 11 to 13 months for me to get a title on a trailer that someone's abandoned. What happens in these trailers is because they're unkept by a lot of people, somebody leaves, somebody else just moves in. We don't, my client doesn't get paid rent. We go to do an eviction and we find out the person who lived there died, right? Somebody else moved in. Why? Not because they're criminals. They needed a place to live, right? And somebody said, there's a place to live. And my clients are doing their best to improve this area. And so what they've done is they've tried to bring in new houses, right? Because we all deserve to have a decent place to live. Mobile homes are an affordable, low-income housing. If I build a house, I only have to be 15, 25 feet off the road, right? If I own a mobile home, I have to be 65 feet off the road, okay? So it almost doesn't seem fair. If you look at the layout of the road going through there, the road is 80 feet wide, right? And I'm talking all the way from where the asphalt just starts to trickle into the dirt from one side to the other. It's 80 feet, okay? South of Curtis, there's another 40 feet until you get to the fence line, okay? North of Curtis, from where the asphalt starts to end to the fence is 80 feet. You called it, Chair, the landscape area. And if you look, if you've been down that road, you know there's a line of trees that are there, bushes. They're exactly 40 feet, almost as if somebody before us said, hey, we need to have a 40-foot strip of a buffer, of barrier, of setback. And so they put that in there. There's a 40-foot strip that runs all the way along the south side of the fence. Now, the UDC, which is, as was stated earlier, is an international code, wasn't built for Laramie or Wyoming or anybody here. The UDC says setbacks go from the edge of the property line, right? What our ordinance says is from the right of way. Now, I'm an attorney, and so I thought right of way meant road, right? Because our statute defines it as a road. But the UDC defines it as the edge of a property line to the next edge of the property line. So there's a 200-foot strip, which tapers down to 150 feet on the east side, that is set aside for the right of way. And it doesn't make sense, right? I would love for us just, Bill, to sit here and say, let's apply common sense. It's been there for 50, 60 years. And what we're trying to do now is to give people upgraded, better housing. Well, I would think we'd want to encourage that, right? I have grown kids who have looked for housing, and it's a difficult challenge. But we have, of course, our law that we have to follow, and I respect our law. And so there's a few things that we have to look at. The great thing about the UDC is that it is a national and international code, right? And so we don't have to figure out just what's happened here in Laramie. We can look everywhere. And so the first thing that we're required to do under Wyoming Statute 151608 is we have to look at the mandatory requirements that must be met to grant a variance. The first one being special circumstances or conditions exist that are peculiar to the specific property and do not generally apply to the neighboring properties. Okay? We don't have to create this. It already exists. There's a court in the Rochester City Council versus Rochester Zoning Board granted a variance because the lot at issue was irregular and uniquely shaped. It contained a naturally existing water feature, and they had challenging topographical features due to the proximity of the existing natural water feature. These unique physical characteristics satisfied the requirement that hardship arise from conditions affecting the specific property rather than the district generally. Like the Rochester case, our land is irregular and shaped. It's very uniquely shaped. It contains a natural existing water feature, ours being the river. Then we've got those tall walls. It is on the very west side where we have nothing out there. There's a flood zone that kind of just lips on the very edge. And as a result, nothing is out there. And then the topographical features being that, as you heard earlier today in the Planning Commission talking about environmental issues, there's nothing happening on that land to concern, let's say, the environment. But if I bring in a developer and put it in an apartment complex, and then I've got this impervious surface everywhere for sidewalks and access and everything like that, we all of a sudden have a real issue out there, right? Do we want all that happening next to the river? We already have residences and homes for people that have been there for decades. And further, and this is really important, we didn't ask for it to be B1, right? You heard the city say that it was 1995, but we know at the very latest, the park existed in 1981, right? There's nothing on the record to show that the owners asked for a change. And if you look at what B1 is used for, according to our ordinance, the B1 district is intended for retail and office uses. The district includes retail centers that provide shopping service to the surrounding neighborhoods and community. Look at that area map and tell me where the surrounding community is. There's nothing around there except for one auto storage rec shop diagonal from the park. There's no reason that it should be one, and that's B1, and that is not the fault of my client that the city chose to do that in 1995. I think today, 30 years later, we can all look back and say, it's not a B1 area. Nobody's ever built residences out there. There's nothing out there to support that use. And as the chair said, there's an 80-foot landscaped area. The second factor we have to look at is the strict application of zoning regulations would deprive the applicant of reasonable use of the property, and the variance is the minimum adjustment necessary. This land has been used for a trailer park for 50 years. The infrastructure in that park is for a trailer park. When you remove a trailer, you now have an empty lot. I can't build a house there, right? I can't do anything with it until all of those lots on the 1 through 14 on the west side, and then 70 through 87 on the east side, until all those people leave, right? Some of them have been there since the 70s and 80s. It seems unfair to just slowly wait them out or force them out of a house they've had for decades because we're worried about a setback distance for a road that's 80 feet away. The most reasonable use for the property is a mobile home park based on the historical use and the internal infrastructure. We cannot practically turn it into anything else. And there was discussion about the 3 trailers that have been placed, and that brought this whole issue before the council. Yes, it was 3, but we don't want anybody living in a 70-year-old or 60-year-old trailer, right? So that's why we have asked for the 70 through 87, which is the lots on the west side, and then 1 through 14, which is the lots on the east side there, along Curtis. Because we want to give everybody decent housing, right? If you've been out there, some of those shacks and sheds people have put up over the years, they're rough, right? I wouldn't have my kid in there, right? And neither would the owners. That's why they want to get new housing in there, new skirting, make it look good. If you look at the ones they've put in there, they look really nice. I think we all know we need affordable housing here. And I would hope that the planning, the commission would want to open up affordable housing and not take away the housing we have. Because if we don't get the variance, what happens to these trailers? As they fall apart, I then spend a year trying to get a title for them so that we can take them down to the dump, because I have to have a title to take them to the dump or to the recycling place, right? And then we don't replace them because they don't make a shorter trailer, right? Those are called RVs, and this isn't an RV park, and I don't want anybody living in an RV a long time, right? I want them living in a home. I grew up in a mobile home, and I think I turned out okay. My wife might disagree, but I think I'm okay. So we don't want to decrease affordable housing, and we don't want to also leave a dilapidated area, because we're not going to force those people out, right? So we're going to wait for the decades that it takes, and then it's going to be unsightly. We would rather put in new places and then give people opportunities to move into new places so we can get the old places out, right? That seems like the right thing to do. The third factor is granting the variance harmonizes with the zoning ordinance purpose. It will not harm the neighborhood or public welfare. I think you heard the city say basically that granting the variance is not going to harm the area. We have plenty of room between the mobile home park and the road for landscaping or a road to be widened. The arterial road can only be 100 feet according to city ordinance. They only need another 20 feet. That's 10 feet on each side. We still got 70 feet on our side and 30 on the other. So I'm not sure why it's an issue. And in Mobile Oil Corporation versus City of Clearwater, the judge there granted a variance where all the property and structures were in place, and it was the city that made the change to the zoning requirements, which caused it to be non-conforming. This wasn't an issue for decades. It's only become an issue because my client tried to improve the park and try to give people better places to live. So we would ask for a broad variance, and it's not something we're looking to abuse, but it makes sense to give people better homes. So we are asking for a variance both for the 40-foot setback from the right-of-way and for the 20-foot setback from the boundary of the park. And now that would be, the 40-foot setback would be for lots 1 through 14 and 70 through 87. The 20-foot setback is more narrowly requested for lots 70 through 80. And that is just the ones all the way on the west side. Okay. And Chair, Council, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for the applicant? Donald?
I probably shouldn't ask this question, but and therefore I will.
Go ahead.
So Laramie River LLC is affiliated, in your letter you said it's affiliated with TCC's management, but I think you said that TCC management owns Neighbors of Laramie River. Is that correct? Because I tried to look up the company and I had trouble finding information on the company. This is a private equity firm?
I don't know if it's a private equity firm. I just know that they're a private company that owns mobile home parks. I know they're connected with, I think it's called Christian church-like communities, and so they're trying to provide affordable housing for folks around the country. So this isn't their only project that they have.
Yeah, if I could just push back a little bit on the affordable housing stuff, you're probably aware we have other companies, not this company, have come into town, and these mobile homes have been a target for private equity. And because of the nature of the relationship between the tenants and the company, there's a lot of power and equity between the company and the tenants. And what we've seen in these other companies, not this company, because I couldn't find any information on it, is they've cranked up rates a lot because the private equity companies and their priority is profitability. So, yes, it does house people, and we do need affordable housing here. But there is, at least in my mind, a question mark over whether these companies that are owned by some of the private equity companies are truly providing affordable housing, because they've got a captive market and they can evict people if they don't make a payment. And
Chair, if I may, I hate to cut you off, Commissioner, but I think we need to stick to the findings of fact rather than who the owner of the property is. I don't think that is germane to the findings of fact. And I would just put that forward at this
So
point.
I'll just make it a point of order.
So let me ask a question that is germane. Are mobile homes, RVs, made to that were made in the 1970s and 60s and so on, are they still being made?
No, so there was and I'm gonna get the year wrong, but there was a law that was passed somewhere, I think in around 85 or 95, that changed the way mobile homes were made, and so they actually call the old homes mobile homes, and the new homes are called manufactured homes, right? And I can't remember the exact year, sir, so I apologize, but there's the new homes are made substantially better than the old homes. I was just in one recently with a client, and by the time she was done giving me a tour, I thought, boy, this is tighter than my house. That's a stick belt, right? And it looked a heck of a lot better than mine did too. So I was really impressed with the quality. So they're different quality, sir. I just can't tell you, I know they have requirements like a building code when they build them that changed at some point in the past. So they are well built now. The old ones are, I got to tell you, when I go into these homes, they're rough, right? And a lot of people have lived in them. And so we'd like to get them some new homes in these places to live in.
So the only way that this could continue to operate as an RV park is if you bring in these larger manufactured homes. That's the only way it can continue to operate as a mobile home park. Is that correct?
As a mobile home park, sir, yeah. They don't make the 24 footers that once were made in the 50s and otherwise. The homes that are made today are a little longer, and I think you heard on different lots, the city state that was 12 and 14 and 20 foot were the change in distance that they saw, so that being an average of about, I don't know, 15 feet. So they are longer, but we're still going to be 80 feet plus from the road.
Okay, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Sir, anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Honorable Chair, if I may, I mean, just a brief search shows that there are mobile home manufacturers that include options that are 24 feet long still. So, I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that they're not still making this in this day and age where anything you can think of is being manufactured. So I think there is still an option for the applicant to bring like for like mobile homes in. So,
and if I could respond, Chair, 24 foot is 200 square feet. Most of you live in a house where your primary bedroom or your kitchen or your living room is 200 square feet, right? We're trying to give people quality living, and that's why we're not putting them in campers.
Go ahead.
I just, similar to the same vein that Philip was on, did also just looked into maybe tiny homes. And I was just curious if tiny homes were allowed in that mobile park. And I know that you said that that's really small, but there's a lot of folks that prefer to live in small spaces. And if they would fit a tiny home, they could fit in that same space. Why isn't that considered, or is it considered? I'm just curious.
So the mobile home park, ma'am, is only going to allow mobile homes pursuant to the code. I can tell you personally, I represent various developers, and every time we've tried to do a tiny home development, it's been shot down before we get to you because it doesn't meet the requirements, and it's so expensive to do a development right now that making a tiny home doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I have worked with a number of developers, and I've taken tours of the tiny home factories. There's several of them in Colorado. Some of them we even talked about bringing up a factory up here to make them. It is difficult to do. It's $225 a square foot to build a tiny home. And it's about $140 to buy a stick-built home, and approximately 200 or less to do a stick-built home according to different builders. And so by the time you get the land in and you do all the infrastructure, we haven't been able to make the numbers work. And so I don't think that you're allowed to have it here based on the code because it's for a mobile home park. And so mobile homes are specifically defined. And so I would love to have a tiny home park someplace, but I think we'd have to do the whole thing would have to be replatted. What would be my guess?
You have to change it from a B1 to RM2 or an R3.
Yeah, it's
to do that. You couldn't do it in a B1.
Okay.
The problem is, one of the problems is with this property is the B1 was dropped on it like a bomb. So it wasn't supposed to be a B1 zoning, but it is a B1 zoning. But the applicant has not asked for a zoning change as part of this operation. So you're kind of limited if it's going to be a mobile home, or it's not going to, or it's going to be a Circle K. And there's not a lot of choice there unless you change the zoning.
So you cannot have a smaller mobile home that fits the dimensions as indicated on the survey, even though they are being manufactured. You cannot have those, is that correct?
Ma'am, I'd have to double check with my client, but it's my understanding that those are difficult to find, and not probably like the same problem we've had with the tiny homes is they're cost prohibitive, right? As far as it takes more to build a tiny home than it does to do a regular home, right?
So it would, not that you can't do it, it's just that it's cost prohibitive to do it.
Well, I don't think it would make sense to the people that want to live there, right? If they're not going to spend $300,000 on a tiny home inside of a mobile home park when they could go to and buy a regular stick-built home with a regular size yard and everything for $300,000.
Anybody else? Joe, you had a
Chair, if you'd like me to answer that question or directly.
Okay.
So, within RV parks, we're allowed two things. We're allowed HUD buildings and RV approved buildings. Now you can have a certain amount of RVs within a spot, but what we're seeing or have seen is that there are some RV tiny homes so that they can still be moved and everything like that. Part of the problem that we see with some of the tiny homes is that they do have to meet some standard, whether or not it's IRC, IBC, HUD, or RV. And so, I think if we're thinking about like kind of the homesteading movement, tiny house thing, it makes it a little bit hard because it would have to come up to IRC standards, International Residential Code standards. And once you start moving it around, it's very hard to track. And so it puts our building department in a very tough position. It's the same thing that we see with like some of the modifications being done to the manufactured homes themselves. Once you start messing around with the interior, it's no longer to that HUD standard that it was previously approved to be at. And so it's a somewhat complicated answer. The answer is not unequivocally no, because if it is an RV standard tiny house, then yes.
Sharon?
Yeah, so I just have a couple of questions about the criteria that we have to look at and what you've offered us as essentially conclusions of law, because if we're going to find we're going to make a decision that's different than what the staff report recommends, then we need to have those alternative findings that, and so I have to, related to the special circumstances, I understand and I appreciate your argument about, and this is the same one that you made, Tom, about still having that significant space. I think what I wanted to ask you was, you said that, if I heard, am I remembering correctly? So your client didn't ask for B1 because your client bought it after B1 was imposed on this property. But your client knew it was B1, right?
Yes, ma'am. But I think that there is case law that states that we don't look to, let me find it exactly so I can tell you. Can't find that case right now, but there's case law out there, ma'am, what basically states that we look to the use of the land, and where the use of the land is significantly different than the zoning, we're going to lead towards the use of the land. In this particular case, the land has been used in the same way for 50 years. There's been no enforcement by the city until recently to do anything. And in those cases, the courts have found that you can, let me find that case, allow the variance based on the historical use.
Well, I think what is troubling me is that B1 has been in place for a while.
Yes, ma'am.
And we have the grandfathering provision to not impose inequity on the person who owned the property, and B1 was dropped down on top of them. But it becomes B1, and then your client comes in and buys it knowing that it's B1. And so knowing, or at least, and they invested to their credit in understanding the law that applies, knowing that there's a benefit from the grandfathering for something as it exists. But if a change is desired, then that's when the current requirements that they were aware of when they bought it, or at least should have been aware of, apply. And so that's the trouble I'm having. And I think, and I was also bothered by the fact that, at least I think it was 3 units were put in without having come to get the variance, and it was only discovered because of the enforcement. So that's why I'm having trouble buying and adopting the reasoning that you have that special circumstances exist, because there are a couple circumstances that for me tip the other way in terms of the equities.
So ma'am, when they bought the property, they were informed that it was grandfathered in as a mobile home park, right? And they're continuing to use it as a mobile home park. The idea that each unit in the mobile home park is not expressly stated in the ordinance.
Well, I disagree with you on that, because I think that the variance that you came in and asked for applies to specific lots, and the grandfathering was for the structures as they existed on the lot. So the grandfathering is not for the use, it's for the structures that exist. And so you're asking for a setback from what would be triggered when there's a change proposed to the specific structures.
So, ma'am, as you stated, they brought in the trailers, the new trailers. They spent several $1,000s improving the lot where the trailer goes, making sure the connections were up to date. And when it comes time to have those connections connected, we call the city comes out, and that's when it was pointed out, hey, we don't think it meets the setback requirement. Up until that moment, ma'am, my client believed that the grandfathering was for the park because there's nothing in the ordinance that says a trailer park unit is grandfathered. We believed under our reading of the law that it was for the park. And I think that's reasonable to believe when you buy something, if it's grandfathered in, that it's for the property you purchased, right?
Right. Now I understand the argument that you're making, but every other time we've had to apply variances, that's not the way a variance from specific requirements. If you're going to evaluate whether you should grant, this is trouble I'm having, I'm being honest with you. If you're going to evaluate whether a variance is legal, can be legally issued, specifically for a setback requirement, then you've got to look at the individual structures, or in this case, the individual mobile homes. It's not a variance for the whole property. That's why I'm having trouble adopting. I do understand your argument now, the sense that the whole use was grandfathered in.
Yes,
the structures were grandfathered in.
And we're asking just for the southern border. That's what we're asking for. I know there was 3 units specifically identified, but we're trying to not waste the board and everyone's time by coming in for each and every unit. It seems like that's going to be a delay for a lot of families to get into housing.
Okay.
That's really the reason.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Bruce, you had your hand up?
Chair. Sharon, thanks for that clarification. Philip, and maybe you can answer this question. What is the value? Why is there a 20-foot setback? I mean, the issue here is just that we got problems with the setbacks. The right of way seems excessive, and it doesn't bother me to give a variance on that right of way setback. But is there a real safety reason for 20 feet off of the property line? Property line is something very discrete that we know of, and if 20 feet is what should be, that a structure needs to be offset 20 feet, then that's what mobile home parks in Laramie setbacks are. I know we would have to give this park a completely different free pass, that they're not susceptible to that 20 feet setback. So is there some flexibility in that in that 20-foot setback, Philip? Or Joe? I'm sorry.
Chair, through you. So the 20-foot setback is from just the property line, not the right of way line, any property lines that are on right of ways. The reason why there's 20% or 20 feet and 40 feet is directly related to the use, the intensity of use, and buffer space that we want to have from there. I don't know specifically of any.
It doesn't seem like we have any of those problems on this property.
And Commissioner Moody, I'll just also say that, on newer manufactured home lots, that space is used for things like landscaping, a required fence, those sorts of things that this property does not have. And so, yes, we do require it. Yes, the roadway is significantly farther because it is YDOT's right of way, an area where whether or not it's built out right now could be built on at not any point. There's a process that goes in through that, but could be built on at any point. We built to what potentially could be there as well. We don't want to remove any rights from people who are building. But yeah, so to answer your question, whereas like the setbacks between buildings are a fire safety issue, this one is a buffer, specifically to my knowledge.
Well, I can drive 8 minutes from here and find three mobile home parks that are barely 20 feet, if at all. Breezel's on 9th Street, the old one on 4th Street. I could think of one down south. I mean, we're looking at numerous mobile home parks, the one on the west side that we denied the new the variance on last year because it was way too big a trailer for the lot. But there are an awful lot of mobile home parks in this town that have a lot less than 20 feet from the property line. And so we're looking at we're we're not changing the universe by reducing the 20-foot setback on the property line. It's a common, it was a common practice and was more than common when this park was built. So that's.
And Chair, that's not a question, but can I respond to that?
Sure.
So you are right. The standards have changed since a lot of these were formed. Like I said, you know, the layout of a lot of these parks are not even within the how normal parks are built today at all. Most of them are not supposed to, in this community or others, supposed to access a public street by each unit. If the concern specifically is that we want to make it easier for mobile homes to be placed on pre-existing use communities, that's not this process. That's a text amendment. And how do we go about that? I think that our department is realizing that this is becoming increasingly an issue for these parks, and we'll be requesting that City Council this in either a work session or otherwise. But eventually, if this does lead to text amendments, it will come before this body again for review. So, yes, you are right. This is a problem. It's going to become an increasing problem as these units become older and older and they wish to change them. And yes, the park itself, or the units themselves, do meet a certain need of housing within the community. But all of those issues are not part of the variance process.
I just had one other standard criteria that I wanted to give the applicant a chance to address, and it was the second one about reasonable use, deprivation of reasonable use. So I guess what I'm wondering is so I think what I heard you say is that it's going to be difficult to put the same number of trailers. First of all, I should say, I do appreciate the effort that's being made to upgrade the quality of the mobile homes that is being provided. I don't disagree with that at all. But what I'm trying to understand is in evaluating reasonable use, we are looking at reasonable use of the property. So it's not necessarily, can you still put on the same number of lots that meet the setbacks, but is there still enough lots to make it a reasonable use? And in this case, a reasonable use as a mobile home park. So how would you respond to that? Because I think the argument why there is not a denial of reasonable use. There is reasonable uses because you still could put in some lots. It's just that the setbacks restrict the number of lots that would accommodate these larger trailers.
Yes, ma'am. So there's two answers to that. One is attrition. When you have people that move out in a trailer park, I do everything I can to ask them to take their trailer with them, or give us a title or something. They don't. Okay. They leave it, and then it's a wreck, and then we deal with that. And so when we do get it out, now we have an empty space, right? Mm-hmm. But we might have an empty space at 3 and the one at 7, and then it might be another 5 years till whatever falls in the middle. And so it's just kind of a loss of use, really. And if we have less units, then in order for my client to cover their operating costs, then it goes up for people. So we maximize as many units as we can in there, and it keeps the cost lower. I think we're lower than the other parks, and we try.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, yeah, Chair. Well, one last thing. So the three trailers that are on there that aren't compliant for setback, are they at the optimum location, or there is no way to fit those on there and meet the setbacks? Are they just mislocated? Is there some way to move them around? To what degree? There absolutely is no way for those three to fit on that lot and fulfill, let's say, the 20-foot property setback.
And sir, I believe that is true. They are set as close to the road as they can be. They need to be 10 feet back from the road, and then they stretch back the distance of the trailer. They've all been sitting there for months. And so we've been trying to locate other spots in this park or other parks that we can relocate them to. But on more than one, there's a family waiting to move in and has been waiting for 6 months or so. And we've tried to accommodate them otherwise, but they're just sitting there. They're as close to the road as they can be, the interior road, because there's a limit there as well. And then whatever the setback is on the back, as you heard the city state, approximately 15 feet between those three. That's where they're at.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Chair or council, any
further questions for the applicant?
Could I ask one? I'll get that. Sure. And you can rule this out of order if you want. Is the plan to introduce throughout this mobile home park to replace all of the units that are currently there, some of which I've seen and look pretty dilapidated, with these larger manufactured homes? Is that the long-term goal?
Sir, we would like to replace all the ones that are in poor shape. Some of them are 10 or 15 years old and are in decent shape. And then there's also people who own their trailer. And so we have no control over what they do with their trailer. So those that have lived there for a while and own their trailer, we're not rushing them out. And so as long as they're there, it will be there. And, if their kids move in or something like that, then obviously it may extend the time. But for all the lots that we have the ability to take out the old dilapidated trailers, we're trying to get new trailers in there, clean up the lots, and give people a place to live that we're proud of. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair, Council.
Well, Judge. Yes, Jake. Is Eric, you got anything to say? Is there anybody online?
Representatives of the mobile home.
Well, they're the public. They can speak if they like.
Yeah.
Feel free if you're online and wish to speak.
They'd have to raise their hand to let me know if they want to make comment.
They probably have to unmute and then raise their hand.
Yeah, sure. It's my understanding that they just wanted to hear the discussion.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, hearing none, no public comment. Any discussion on the commission?
I just want to flag that I think that I'm worried that if we do choose, if we want to approve the variance, I'm not sure there's an accurate record to justify that. And my biggest concern is and maybe the staff can address this, but we got the cover letter from the applicant. So there may have been more detail that's in the record, but it's not before us in terms of I never saw in writing. I heard the applicant describe the exact variance that's being requested, but I didn't see it specified in either the applicant's cover letter or the staff report in terms of the exact variance were granted, except for the language, we're looking for it to apply to the whole southern border. So even if we were to believe that all the criteria are met, we have to be able to justify and list that. And I'm uncomfortable with the lack of specificity about the nature of the variance and the scope of the variance that we would be granting. I plan to vote to deny, but I do want to flag that.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Chair, I agree with Sharon completely that it is not defined and half baked as to what the variance would actually be consist of. So I think this is a difficult situation, and maybe it can be dealt with as a text amendment to get mobile home standards defined. But I think this is pretty half baked as presented, and I will vote to deny as well.
My concern is, while we're not supposed to consider financial conditions, what happens if the owner figures he can't make any money on this property at all, files Chapter 11 on this project and walks away, and we turn into fire traps? You know, which, if with the current condition and with this as a record, nobody else is going to buy it. It's a pig in a poke. And well, to be honest, I was born in 1950 and lived on 180th Street and Arthur Avenue in the Bronx until I was 18. The Bronx burned because people could no longer make money off of their properties, and they filed bankruptcy and walked away. And New York City lost the Bronx lost 250,000 residences. This is a road that I have seen before. And so if you get a property owner to the point where he can no longer make money on his property, he's going to walk away. I walked away from an 8-unit project in Albuquerque because the only other option would be to go Section 8. And I refused to do that. So I walked away from it and let the previous owner take it back. It's a fact of life that happens. You know, I have driven the property, and besides the southern boundary, you go to the northern boundary, and there are 3 abandoned trailers up there and a couple of empty lots. I mean, then the 20-foot setback from the property line would affect those in the back. So to me, it's pretty specific why he wants to do what he wants. I think it could have been prepared better, but I'm going to have to speak in favor of approving the variance because I just think there's too many things that can go wrong with this property if we don't improve it. And we've got a developer, an owner willing to spend the money to do it. And it's not going to be cheap. This process here has probably cost them a pretty penny. So with that, I'll leave it alone. Anybody else, Jenna?
What is, because my understanding is there's a final paragraph on page 3 of the staff, and it references sites 74, 77 as not needed, and then it asks for relief. So to me, it is those 3 sites. It's not, at least the staff report has focused on those sites and a variance for those sites, which is different than what the letter says. So I guess some reconciliation there for me, well, just so that I understand what staff intended. And I do understand what, what it intended by funding the trailer park, but I don't quite understand by staff.
Joe, you want to take that one?
Sure, I can answer questions during this discussion.
Oh, okay. What do, clerk, what's the protocol here?
Tom, or
Chris, do you have a comment?
yeah. I guess one last question. One option is we could do a postponement, and maybe get some more information on whether there are in fact smaller trailers that might fit that are actually manufactured, and they be have a cost comparison of the ones they've got on the lots now versus. I guess I'm not buying the idea completely that they don't make manufactured homes that will fit on these lots. I guess I'd like to be convinced that that is true. Whether that would be some information that would be useful to us, and then an actual variance that's better defined as to whether we're dealing with just 3 lots or the southern boundary, and what are we just going to not have any setbacks at all on the southern boundary, and you can stick the end of the trailer right there on the property line? What are the boundaries of the variance that we're going to agree to? And those aren't defined. So, maybe a postponement is an option to consider.
So you're asking if excuse me, Joe, you're asking if the variance is approved, that there be conditions added to it. Is that kind of what you're saying? You want a definition?
Yeah, I mean, we've given a variance for meaning there are no setbacks. Is that what the variance is going to provide the applicant?
So if there was conditions placed on approval, which is perfectly legal. It's one of the things outlined in the staff report. We can approve the variance with conditions. Pick a number. What would be?
I'm not comfortable picking a number without some idea of how important that setback is. If it serves a specific purpose, that the number has some meaning.
Well, mobile homes currently have to meet certain standards, either HUD or the residential code as far as sizes. I don't know what the nationwide acceptable setback from property is. As I said, I've seen some really close ones here in Laramie. So do you have a comment on that?
Chair, I don't have a problem if you want to postpone the vote. We can amend our application and provide the information that the chair and council has requested and make sure that's all in there so that you feel comfortable with the vote. And I could get that ready and to you before the next meeting.
Donald?
The way I read this is the variance would be granted for the lots 74, 77, 79. But what I hear you saying is you want a variance for all of those lots on the south side. Is that correct?
That's what we asked for, sir. But if I could get 74, 77, and 79 today, then I can apply again for a variance and provide the additional information that the commission and the chair has requested.
Wouldn't it be more efficient if it was kind of for the whole southern thing rather than the camel's nose in the tent? You've given us these 3, so we want the rest on the southern side.
It would be more efficient to do them all. That's why I initially said, if you want to postpone the vote, I'm happy to amend it and provide the information that the chair and the commission asked for.
Because there's also an important, like you assured us that manufactured homes are not being made that are 70 foot long. And yet I think Philip said they are being made. So, and that's one of the issues that Chris had was, do they exist or do they not exist?
Yeah, and I'm not an expert at going off what I've been told, sir. So
okay, thank you.
Chair, I think it's important also to note that all of the criteria listed for variance need to be met. So I think if it is the desire of the commission to go in the direction of approving this variance, then we need to go through each finding and make language that's going to show that those conditions are being met.
Well,
All of them.
So
Yeah.
will of the commission here, you want to postpone it or we want to fight through it tonight? You want to get more information? Chris, you got your hand up?
Yeah, that was it. It was just a suggestion. If a postponement would work for me. But I do have, a feeling that, the setback requirements are what they are. And, it's, unless I can be convinced that, the 20-foot setback isn't that important from property line in this particular situation and is something that is area wide in mobile home parks, such that, yeah, maybe there'll be a text amendment to take care of this difficult situation in the town, so that this mobile home park isn't getting something that everybody else isn't getting too, that mobile home parks in town.
Joe?
So that's not much of an answer, but I guess I would go, if I.
Sorry.
What do
Sorry
you
to
guys
interrupt,
think? Yeah.
Commissioner Moody. I just do want to reiterate that generally variances are up on a structure by structure basis, looking at things individually. Giving it a carte blanche to do essentially whatever it wants is highly inadvisable for this body to do. And especially when it's unequitably enforced between mobile home parks. I think that would be setting us up for some very arbitrary and capricious decisions that would certainly get our buns sued off.
That all I can say is I just look at beyond what happens in the variance, proved or denied. We've got to look at we've got findings of fact and conclusions of law, and I think there's an argument to be made on each individual finding of fact that's both pro and con. And we could be here till midnight and really not prove anything one way or the other with the information we have at hand.
Yeah, I'd like to propose that, and I'm prepared to move that we deny it based on the record we have. If that motion fails, then I think we should move forward with a motion to postpone, but to do it based on gathering very specific information. Because we don't want to reopen it and go over everything again. But if that motion fails, then I think there are a couple of specific things that I've heard based on the conversation that we should request in order to then be able to consider approving it in a way that it might be supportable. But I personally would like to, I would like to move that we vote on denying it. And it does leave open the option of then, because if that gets rejected, it's not an affirmative decision, and we can then make a motion to postpone the matter and gather
Well,
the information necessary to consider its
If
approval.
we do not approve the denial, then that means we're approving it.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
No, Chair, we would have to go through the conditions and address how each one is being met in the affirmative, and then you could approve it based on that. So that, I mean, that's another reason to perhaps postpone in that manner as we've done in the past, so that we can create language as
I think it's important how I frame the motion, but I think we can vote
All right,
on
I'm
whether or
listening.
not to deny it. And so let me just get the right
Take a minute.
language. Yep. Let me just look at this for a second. Okay, so I move to deny the requested variance from Laramie Municipal Code 15.14.140.A6, which would permit the applicant to encroach on setback requirements for manufactured home communities located at 1664 Cedar Street based on findings of fact and conclusions of law. And so I'm moving to deny, and we're gonna just vote on denial. And if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. Maybe it doesn't get seconded. But
Okay,
that's my motion.
it's a motion. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Or should we go to a vote? All right. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Pacino,
Aye.
Bull, Heisler White, Moody,
Aye.
O'Toole,
Aye.
Schneider,
No.
and Mattimore.
No.
That is 5 yeses and 2 no.
Motion denied.
Okay. Well, that's pretty much it. Is there any restriction on whether or not he can resubmit on a unit by unit basis?
Chair, the same variance cannot be brought forward, but if the applicant wants to ask for, a different amount, a different amount of setback requirement, then they could certainly do that. But it can't be the same exact variance, cannot be brought forward again.
All right, what is the possibility of planning department working on a text amendment?
Chair, the city council in their most recent goals that they adopted have explicitly put a work session for mobile home parks on their list of things that they like us to look into. How are mobile home parks regulated in Laramie versus other jurisdictions? So that will be coming later this year. So the discussion from that could lead to a text amendment. But to answer your question.
Seeing no other business, the chair would entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn the Board of Adjustment.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, pack up your stuff and leave.
Does this mean we can have dinner now?
What? I'm gonna go get a hamburger. My dinner was postponed. I knew this was gonna